Hey everybody, I'm Chef Teddy B, and this is Made Scratch Texas. We own and operate Scratch Catering in Southlake, Texas, conveniently located between Fort Worth and Dallas. 8 years ago, we set out to disrupt the catering market, and disrupt it we have done. We are one of the few companies with 5-star ratings across all platforms. We serve dignitaries such as the Honorable Greg Abbott, Governor of the state of Texas, Emeril Lagasse, the Food Network, ESPN, Good Morning America, the Texas Ranger Baseball Club, home and visitor clubhouse. But what makes us so proud of what we do is we utilize and leverage our culinary expertise to serve the community. We feed 40 to 50 senior citizens 5 days a week, 51 weeks a year, a hot, fresh meal. 5 years ago, we started donating private dining packages to our philanthropic partners, where they auction them off at their galas. In 5 years, we've raised in excess of $600,000. I'll say it again, $600,000. That's pretty unheard of for a small independently owned company. What makes us unique is we started this on a whim. We have no culinary training, no formal expertise. We've just learned it on the fly, and today when you see us cook, it's gonna be absolutely amazing. So let's talk about today's meal. We're gonna start off with a donut grilled cheese. A donut grilled cheese, something we created about 3 years ago, and it's by far one of the most popular appetizers we produce. Think donut grilled cheese, think bacon, sweet, savory. It's amazing. Reverse surf and turf. What, chef? What's reverse surf and turf? Well, we're gonna make a bourbon glazed grilled salmon in the center of the plate, accompanied by a brisket cake. Chef, what's a brisket cake? Think crab cake made with brisket, cilantro, jalapenos, spicy pickles. You get it. It's just amazing. We're gonna accompany that with a hash brown casserole and some Southern style green beans. And last but not least, we're gonna conclude the evening with some bourbon glazed bread pudding. So you guys sit back, relax, and enjoy the meal coming ahead of you. So to start off our amazing meal for the evening, we're gonna start off with one of our most popular and decadent appetizers, the donut grilled cheese. It sounds a little funky, but believe me, stay with me, you're gonna really dig it. So we start with a locally sourced glazed donut from a bakery down the street. Super simple, easy. We take the donut, cut it in half. Take our cut edges, and we're just gonna put a nice slathery piece of some salted butter on each side. It's kind of like the bourbon. You can never have too much butter on your donut. Once we take the donut, you have both pieces buttered, just like the grilled cheese you made when you were a kid. We're gonna take a slice of American cheese. How about one more slice of American cheese for a little bit extra? They go between the glazed sides of the donut. Now, super simple, just like again, back at your house when you were a little kid and mom used to make for you, grilled cheese, it goes to the frying pan, and all you wanna do is get a nice sear on it and get it nice to where the American cheese wants to melt. While that's going on, we've got some thick cut bacon that we're gonna make a candied bourbon skewered bacon, and that will go be the garnish for the donut. So we've got some thick cut bacon. We throw a little brown sugar in it, a little bit of our 1845 bourbon. And all we wanna do is bring this goodness together. So what I like to do is I like to use a thick cut bacon, and I want to go ahead and I pre-bake in the oven and get it to about 75% cooked. That way when I put the bourbon glaze on it, all it does is finish it off and enhance the bourbon size. So that's going on. We're going to flip the grilled cheese once. Let the other side caramelize out. Bacon's coming together nice. We got challenged by one of our clients about 5 years ago, make this, and it's absolutely become one of the best sellers. People look at it on the menu and can't believe what they're reading, but once they try it, it's done. All right, a couple more minutes on the grilled cheese, a couple more minutes on the bacon. And the great thing about these is you can serve them hot, you can serve them cold. We like to serve them cold. We pass them at an event. They hold up for hours, and they're absolutely amazing. You get the sweet, you get the savory. Your friends will be calling you an absolute genius when you present this at the next party. So this is what you're looking for when you're done. It's just a nice golden brown. The American cheese is melted. And you can do one of two things. We like, get this butter off here, we like to serve these as an appetizer. You can absolutely serve this as a sandwich. You can put the bacon in the middle of the sandwich. But for the purposes of our meal today, we're gonna cut the appetizer into fourths. And let me get my bacon. So again, we've got thick cut candy bacon with a bourbon glaze on it. We take a piece of bacon, put the skewer through it, and that's it. And that is one of the most absolute, decadent, sweet, savory appetizers you're ever gonna make. So for today's entrees portion, we're gonna do what I like to call reverse surf and turf. Most everybody out there knows surf and turf is beef is the center of the plate. That's the star of the show, complemented with a nice piece of seafood. Today we're gonna change it up. The seafood's gonna be the star of the plate. Bourbon glazed Atlantic salmon, accompanied by a teddy cake. Most people don't know what a teddy cake is. Teddy cake's a brisket cake. You've imagined and seen what a crab cake looks like, but now imagine it made with Texas brisket, cilantro, jalapenos, just a whole bunch of goodness, panko fried, drizzle with a little aioli, absolutely magnificent. That will actually become the secondary star of the show. Let's get started. So to make our brisket cakes, we've been smoking the brisket for about 14, 16 hours. We use a prime USDA cut brisket. Keep it very simple. We're old school in Texas. We do like sea salt, coarse brown pepper, granulated garlic. We cook over hickory, low and slow, 225 degrees for 14, 16 hours. So for today's recipe, we're gonna use about a half a pound of brisket. I like to use the lean piece because we don't want all of the extra oils emulsifying in our dish. And again, a lot of people, whether you're making a crab cake, brisket cake, we don't want to over chop. We want our guests to be able to taste the brisket and see the brisket in the cake. So again, we're just going to do a nice rough chop, and that's about 3/4 of a pound. So we're going to put about a half a pound in the bowl. Push the excess to the side. We'll do about a teaspoon of rough chopped fresh cilantro. Cilantro gives that nice aromatic flavors in the cake. To help hold the binding, again, it's going to be like a crab cake texture, so we need something to hold it together. We're going to use about, let's call it a tablespoon of some finely crushed Italian breadcrumbs. Now, one of the other unique things we put in here are our spicy pickles. We source these locally in North Texas, and it's just about a cup of pickles. And again, we're just going to do a nice rough chop, a little bit finer than the brisket. Again, we still want you to be able to taste all the ingredients in the cake, and it's just going to give you a nice contrasting flavor when you bite into the cake. So that's about a cup. Nothing sounds like Texas cuisine other than a fresh jalapeno. I like it hot, so when I'm cooking, I like to just basically cut it. I'll leave the seeds. If you're adverse to heat, you can absolutely take the jalapeno, simply cut it out, cut the core, devein it, deseed it, and just a naked jalapeno, not too much heat. So we're going to use a half of a jalapeno, and we're going to do this a little bit finely more diced. Again, we've kept the seeds in there, and we don't want people biting into the jalapeno and getting a real big surprise. So that's about a tablespoon and a half of jalapeno. One of the other ingredients we do is we kind of keep, this is a staple in our kitchen. This is our hash brown casserole, and this will actually be part of our secondary side of our reverse surf and turf meal. So I've got about a cup here. I'm going to put about a 3/4 cup. We'll get this a nice good mix. And again, the brisket produces enough moisture and a grease in here that really generally don't put eggs in it. It'll be a nice dry bond. Depending on how you like the seasoning. Some folks like salt, some like pepper. We use a nice Cajun blend. It's going to have a lot of southern goodness in it. And we season the whole mix with probably, I almost call it about a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half. And then once we get the cakes put together, I like to use a nice biscuit cutter or cookie cutter. And we'll come in and we form the cakes, pack it down real tight so it'll hold its shape. And this generally will yield about 3 to 4 cakes, this size recipe. Nice, packed tight in the mold. And let's do one more. So again, we make this recipe all the time for an appetizer, generally always a crowd favorite. This size more goes to the entree size. So today I've got about 3 cakes, and they're going to be about a quarter, probably 3/8 of a pound each. I like to put them in the freezer for about 20 to 30 minutes to get them to hold their shape. Then we're going to panko bread them and fry them. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So you saw us make our brisket cakes. We put them in the freezer for about 45 minutes to an hour so they came nice and firm. Brought them out, let them come to maybe set for 10-15 minutes, and you kind of see they hold their shape. So what we've done is we've made a nice little egg wash batter. We're going to just softly toss it in here. Over here I've got a cup of panko and a cup of crushed Italian breadcrumbs. Mix them all together. Again, no seasoning required because all the seasoning is in the brisket cake. We're going to take it, get all sides coated, make sure the sides are coated, the top is coated. Let's bring it over here to our fire and let's get it cooked. While we were preparing the panko, we had a cup and a half of some fresh shortening on the fire to get it nice and melted. So again, what we want to do is we want to cook this bad boy for about 3 minutes on each side, getting a nice golden brown. We don't want to turn it a whole lot. We don't want it to fall apart, but each side will become nice and golden brown. So the second part of our reverse surf and turf entree, we're going to do a bourbon glazed Atlantic salmon. So I brought in 2 portions of fresh salmon. I like it a little bit thicker. Some folks like it a little thinner, so we're going to cook both pieces. I like to take my salmon, they've been patted dry with a napkin, but after they've been patted dry to kind of get all the packing oils off of it, I like to put a little bit of olive oil on them just to give them a little bit of adhesive. Real simple. We do nice coarse kosher salt on each side. Get them nicely coated, and then I do some coarse pepper. Because we're going to put the bourbon glaze on the salmon, it kind of wants to take away some of the spice. I like a lot of pepper. A lot of my colleagues and friends don't like a lot of pepper, so we kind of go middle of the road. We're going to coat both sides, put a little bit more olive oil on them, and again, coarse salt and pepper each side, coarse salt and pepper each side. In the skillet behind me, I've got 1 stick of some salted butter. Kind of like to let it get down and melt. We're going to cook the salmon on a kind of a medium high. If you'll notice, I like my salmon skinless on both sides, so we've removed the skin on both sides of the salmon. And on the salmons that size, the thinner obviously going to cook a little bit quicker, but probably 2 to 3 minutes per side. Got a nice little pan sear on them. The butter, the salted butter is going to give it really nice complementing flavor to the salt and pepper. Let it go for about 2 minutes. Then we'll come back, we'll flip it, and then we'll hit it with the bourbon glaze. Stay wet with us. Welcome back, everybody. The salmon's been in the skillet for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. We're going to go ahead and flip each side. You're going to be very careful that you don't splash the butter on you because it's a little bit hot. And at this point, we're going to let the salmon go for about another 2 minutes per side. But while that's doing, I'm going to go ahead and get some brown sugar in the pan and kind of let that start caramelizing. I'll put a little bit on top of it for a little extra goodness. So the brown sugar will be caramelizing. Then we're going to go ahead and add some of our nice 1845 bourbon into the pot. Now what the bourbon and the brown sugar kind of do is gives a nice caramelization on the skin of the salmon. So this side will be cooking for about another minute, minute and a half. And the way I like to look at the salmon, you'll kind of start seeing some white flakes on the salmon come to the top. That's when you know it's pretty much done. We don't like to overcook the salmon. When we take the salmon out and plate it, we like to be able to take our fork and just flake it off in layers. That's absolutely just an amazing way. Welcome back. We've cooked the salmon for about 3.5 to 4 minutes now. It's about, I'm going to say it's a almost rare to medium rare blend. Now we're going to bring a little bit more bourbon into the pan, get a little flambe, and finish it off. We've turned this fire up to hot. We'll let the alcohol burn off, and what that's going to do is a nice caramelization on the skin of the salmon. And ladies and gentlemen, I think we have some bourbon glazed flambé salmon. Hey, welcome back, everybody. So for the starch for today's meal, we're gonna make one of my favorites. It's our hash brown casserole. It's a super easy recipe, so let's get started. First, we're gonna rough coarse dice a white onion. And again, like everything we make, I like to kind of keep the dicing to a little bit of coarseness, so when you bite into it, you kind of taste the flavors. Behind me in the cast iron skillet, I've got a stick of some salted butter going. We're gonna come in, put our onion in. I'm gonna saute the onion for a little bit. We're gonna add 1 pound of some southern diced, pre-skinned, pre-diced potatoes. And if you're looking for these in the grocery store, they're simply described as southern potatoes. We're gonna do some coarse salt. We're gonna do some coarse pepper. And because I like to kick things up about, we're gonna do like 2 pinches of some of our Cajun seasoning. So this will actually saute for about 2 to 3 minutes. Once it's sauteed, we'll bring it back over here and put the ingredients on. Y'all stay right with me, come right back soon. So we've had our potatoes and onions sauteing for about 4 to 5 minutes now, and they're kind of getting a nice golden brown caramelization on the onions. That's when you know they're done. But this is not the full cooking piece. All I want to do is get the onions caramelized, the potatoes soft. There's nothing that's worse than a crunchy potato in your casserole. So we're going to bring this off the fire, back to our mixing bowl, and put the rest of the goodness back together. Y'all come right back. So we've taken the potatoes off of the fire. They've been again there about 4 to 5 minutes. Nice caramelization on the onions. We're going to put it in our mixing bowl. And we're going to keep the pat here because it's going right back in the pan into the oven. So to finish this off, is I've taken 4 strips of our thick cut bacon, and we pre-cook this in the oven. Always keep fresh bacon on hand. We're going to do 1 cup of cream of mushroom soup. We're going to do 1 cup of whole milk sour cream. And I'm going to do 1 cup of sharp cheddar cheese. We're going to give this a quick mix. Because we are sauteing the onions and the potatoes in the cast iron skillet, it left a nice residue of butter and oils on here, so we do not need to re-season the pan. So this will go back right into the skillet. And I like to have the oven at about 350, 375, again, depending whether you're using gas or electric. And this will probably bake for about 45 minutes. So we put this back in the skillet, spread it around. All that goodness is touching all the potatoes. And this will go in the oven for about, like I said, 30, 40 minutes. What you're looking for is when we pull out of the oven, it'll have a nice crisp caramelization on the top of the skillet. Y'all come back and see what happens when we're done. So welcome back. We've had this hash brown casserole in the oven for about 30 to 45 minutes. It's come to a nice golden brown. We pulled it out while we were away, added 2 cups of sharp cheddar cheese. Let me show you the goodness we just made. Sharp cheddar cheese has been melted. It's ready for presentation, plating, and ready to eat. Y'all come back and watch how we make our green beans next. Hey, welcome back everybody. So we've got the surf and turf portion of our entree done. We've got the starch. Now let's do the veggies. Veggies, one of my favorites, is Southern style green beans, and it's super easy. We're gonna start with 1 pound of French style green beans, half a stick of butter, 1 cup of coarsely diced white onion, and then 3 pieces of thick cut bacon. Once that's all in the pan, I do about 1 teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons of our pre-made Cajun seasoning off to the cooktop. So once it's on the cooktop, we're gonna let the onions caramelize for about 10-15 minutes. Give it a nice stir. The bacon will start recooking itself, kind of bring all that wonderful flavor back into the green bean. The whole process will probably take about 20-25 minutes. You guys come back and look at the finished product. We'll be right back. So while we're finishing up on the green beans, we're gonna go ahead and make our chipotle aioli reduction to kind of garnish our brisket cakes. Again, super easy recipe, lots of flavor. So we're gonna take a can of adobe chilies in its own sauce. Again, that's available at any of your local grocery stores. We're gonna take probably, a good heaping spoon of some regular whole milk mayo, about a half a cup of olive oil, our trusty old Cajun seasoning. I probably like to do about 1.5 2 teaspoons of it. Put the top on our bullet blender and let's emulsify. Get it all shaken up. So after about 30 seconds, the chipotle aioli is all done. We'll put this in a nice squirt bottle to be able to garnish and present our plates. Y'all come back and see us. Hey, welcome back everybody. So we've done all the cooking for the day. Now it's time for the fun part. Now we're gonna plate the meal. So as I mentioned today, we're gonna start it off with our donut grilled cheese with candied bacon. Got 4 pieces, perfect to be able to pass around. Again, you can serve those hot or cold. The entree today is our reverse surf and turf. Center of the plate is gonna be our bourbon glazed salmon. We're gonna garnish the plate. We've made some house-made aioli. Put a nice dollop down. Drag the spoon across, give it a nice presentation. Take our brisket cake, right there. Our bacon southern style green beans, right here. And then lastly, our hash brown casserole. As you can see, the cheese just melted so perfectly on that. It's absolutely be able to cut it, scoop it out. And then to wrap everything up, I like cilantro, so we're gonna put a little cilantro garnish over everything on the meal. Now that the whole meal's been presented, let's go to the fun part. Happy ending, dessert. Now that we've wrapped up this amazing meal, let's wrap it all up with an amazing dessert, our bourbon glazed chocolate bread pudding. Let's get started. We take a loaf of locally sourced French bread from a local baker. We're gonna just dice this up in a little 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch pieces. Once we get this diced up, it'll all go into a seasoned cast iron skillet. So this is about the size French bread you want. Keep the crust on it, about 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. Fill our cast iron skillet. And we're gonna go about 3/4 of the way full on the skillet to get the consistency we want with the pudding. So we've pretty much got the pan about halfway full. Again, the pieces are about 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. And you don't want to overstuff the pan. You don't want the pudding very dense. We basically want it to be light and fluffy as we put the batter in it. So one more piece, that ought to do it. Nothing like working with a sharp, sharp knife in the kitchen. Can't understate that. Now that we've got the bread in the pan, let's go ahead and make the liquid portion of the dessert. So to make the liquid portion of the dessert, we're gonna go with 8 cracked eggs, which we've already cracked in here. Gonna mix it with 2 cups of milk. We're gonna do about 3/4 of a cup of vanilla. We're gonna whisk this together, gently beating the eggs. Now for the dry portion of this mix, I'm gonna use a separate mixing bowl. We're gonna do 2 cups of granulated sugar, 1 cup of chocolate cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and we're gonna whisk this together. Because if you try to mix it in the wet portion, when you start mixing it together, you kind of want it clumps and doesn't want to solidify. So we mix our dry ingredients separate from the wet, making sure we knock all the chunks out of it. Now we're gonna put the chocolate mixture into our wet portion. Get this out of here. And a quick little stir. And this is what's gonna make all the magic happen in the bread pudding. A little sweet, a little savory. And once we have everything broken apart in the bowl, then we're going to pour it over our diced French bread. So that just makes a nice, cozy little chocolate bath for the bread. And then once everything is coated in the chocolate, we're going to take it up to the next level, and we're going to add some dark chocolate morsels. And what I like to do is put the chocolate, kind of spread them evenly over the bread pudding. And this is about a cup, cup and a half of rich, decadent dark chocolate. Once we get the top coated, what I like to do is kind of take my hands and push them down. That way the chocolate goes top to bottom, and it really gives a nice consistency for the flavor and the chocolate of the pudding. And then any piece of bread you see there that didn't get fully coated in the liquid, just kind of push it down like that. Now we're just about ready for the oven. We're going to do a chocolate crumb topping put it on there right before we put it in the oven. All right, now that we've got the bread and the bread pudding mix with our liquid sauce and our decadent dark chocolate, we make a crumb topping to go on top, and that helps pull the whole flavor profile together as baking. So to make our crumb topping, I take a half a stick of butter, I take about a cup of light brown sugar, we're gonna take a cup of pecans, and I'm gonna coarsely chop those. Now, if you're making this dessert and somebody's got a nut allergy, obviously you can omit the pecans. It's just not as decadent without the pecans. Nothing sounds like bread pudding without a nice chocolate glaze, toasted pecans. We toasted these previously before we started. And that's basically, we put them on a sheet pan and we cook them for about 10 to 15 minutes at 350 degrees. And this gives them a nice, toasty, smoky taste. So I've got my pecans roughly chopped. And again, you don't want them too fine because you want a nice piece of pecan bite as you're taking a bite of the dessert. So there's 1 cup of pecans, and I just like to get my hands in here, mix it all up. Again, you're just gonna do a rough mix. That half a cup of butter was softened, so it goes real easy in the mix. And don't be scared, it's gonna fall over the board, but we can just scoop it right back in. And then once you get it to a nice consistency where kind of when it crumbles in your hand, this is when we know it's done. And we take it, and it's kind of a nice dry mix. Let's get this picked up here off the board. Once we get this all mixed together, now we're just gonna slightly just crumble it over the bread pudding. And again, when this bakes, the sugar solidifies down in the bread pudding and just makes it a more decadent dessert. Now when we top this off, when we finish the bread pudding, while this is in the oven baking, we're gonna make our bourbon glaze to put on top of it. And if that's not enough, we're gonna do a chocolate ganache drizzle on top. So we just keep loading the chocolate profile after the chocolate profile. Once the topping starts to melt, it will just spread completely over the pudding and just complete the whole flavor profile. Alrighty, so now we are done and it is ready to go in the oven. So we've got the pudding in the oven, it's 375 degrees, and it's gonna bake for 45 minutes to an hour. The name of the game is bourbon glazed bread pudding. So now we're gonna make the bourbon glaze. We start with 1 egg, crack it. We're gonna slightly beat the egg. We're gonna add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And we're gonna add 1 heaping cup of granulated sugar. And when you do this, you're gonna see the mixture kind of emulsifies. And then the name of the game is bourbon, bourbon glazed bread pudding. My good friends at 1845 Bourbon have been kind enough to send me a bottle of their finest, and it's gonna get 3/4 cup bourbon in the mix. So you gently mix this all together. I've got 1 stick of salted butter in our skillet. Follow me over here, let's go ahead and get this thing going. So we're just gonna gently bring the whole thing to a slight warm mixture. We're gonna make sure the butter's fully melted and the sugar will start to meld and come together. Keep stirring, you don't want the butter to scald. And we're done. We're just gonna turn it to off and we're gonna let it sit there and come together. And when the bread pudding comes out of the oven, we're gonna be ready to roll. Welcome back, everybody. So we've had our meal, we've had our appetizers. Now here's my most favorite part of the meal, dessert. Our chocolate bread, bourbon glazed bread pudding. Let's get this thing started plated. So we're gonna cut a nice, healthy portion out. Again, we put a crumb topping on the top of the pudding, so it's giving a nice crunch. And the dark morsels you're seeing up here are gonna be the dark chocolate morsels that we baked into the pudding. So we pull this out. Gonna go center of plate. Again, we talked about we made a bourbon reduction sauce. We're gonna top this with a nice bourbon sauce. And while you guys are away, we went ahead and made a chocolate ganache just because you can never have too much chocolate. Chocolate ganache, we use some dark, semi-sweet morsels, and then we cut it with about a half portion of some heavy whipping cream. Mix it together, nice, silky smooth. So here, we're just gonna and there you guys have it. Bourbon glazed, ganache topped bread pudding. Y'all enjoy. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. Just to kind of a recap what we did today, we did our donut grilled cheese as an appetizer, and that was a fresh glazed donut, some candied bacon. Moving on to the entree of a reverse surf and turf, and that was gonna be our pan-seared salmon with our brisket cake with a chipotle aioli glaze. hash brown casserole, and Southern style green beans. And then finally, last but not least, our bourbon glazed bread pudding with a fresh chocolate ganache glaze. So thanks again for joining me. I'm Chef Teddy B from Scratch Catering in Southlake, Texas. I look forward to seeing everybody next week for some more down-home Southern style cooking from the great state of Texas. Y'all take care.